You're listening to Guardians of Galen, your go-to podcast for USC Trojan basketball.
Let's get started.
USC basketball fans around the globe, welcome back to Guardians of Galen, your go-to podcast for USC basketball. I'm your host, Kasey Caslin, alongside my good friend and a guy who had his birthday yesterday, Terence Holton. Terence, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Kasey. Yeah, great time.
Yeah, well, it's a perfect time to do an episode because USC men's basketball is back in exactly 100 days from now. And so, yeah, early November, we'll have a lot more coverage. But it's the offseason. There's been some stuff that's happened since you and I last talked about USC basketball. I know we had an episode in April when the Alijah Arenas news about him going into a coma after the car crash occurred, as well as some roster stuff that had changed. But let's talk about just the latest news with Arenas, because there is some pretty devastating news for the young guard who really cannot catch a break. He gets into a car crash with his Cybertruck and goes into a coma. And now he has a knee injury that will sideline him for 6 to 8 months. Mm-hmm. So, what were your initial thoughts when you heard that? Obviously, it's a very devastating thing to hear about, a 5-star freshman who reclassified, but it's a very tough thing to hear. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much just echoing what you said. It's just devastating. The guy can't catch a break. It's really sad. Obviously, the Cybertruck crash puts his life in danger. Not really sure about that. Turns out he's going to be completely fine. He's cleared to play basketball 1 week ago and then tears his meniscus, if I'm correct, if that's the exact diagnosis. But so sad. Feel so bad for the guy. I would hope that he sticks around for another year. Wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even play a game for USC.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it's tough to kind of evaluate. I mean, Bronny, of course, had the cardiac arrest episode, and he ended up playing, but that was something he could recover from that season. Vincent Iwuchukwu also had a similar thing. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, Isaiah Collier broke his hand his freshman year. There's so many injuries to USC freshmen and young players. It feels like this team is cursed sometimes. But yeah, I agree with you, especially because he reclassified from the class of 2026 to the class of 25. He's a guy that, is expected to be a lottery pick. He's, such a big guard. He seemed like he was going to fit well in the Musselman system. He's a 6'6" guard. And I think really, you look at the roster they have right now, I think he would have fit really well into it just because of his size and because USC has a lot of veterans that have, tournament experience, guys like Rodney Rice, Chad Baker-Mazara, playing on his wing, I feel like would be huge. But, we might never see that, which is really unfortunate. Yeah. And so now it kind of leaves USC without ton of PG depth and not a lot of guard depth in general. Arenas is supposed to be the projected starting point guard. He is 6'6". He's bigger for a guard, but it's unfortunate they haven't been able to have a truly exciting freshman player just because of the injuries and the unfortunate stuff that's happened these past few years. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, enough of that. I mean, it's unfortunate, but not much can change from, now to 6 to 8 months from now. But let's talk about some of the depth USC does have. Because, you and I talked in April, there have been a few commitments since then. The first one is Jordan Marsh I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. He seems like a really high upside player. I watched some tape on, pretty much all of the new guys that have come in, and he seems like a really kind of spongy player. He's very quick. He has that spot shooter mentality, and he's a point guard by trade. But he does have the catch and shoot ability that Muss would probably, appreciate in the starting five. You could move him around maybe a little bit. We saw a little bit of that from Chibuzo Abo last year. I mean, love or hate the guy, he could make threes. Marsh, had one of his better performances against Alabama. First game of the season, he had 13 points. He had some better performances down the stretch, but Alabama was really the only truly good opponent that UNC Asheville played in the regular season.
Don't disrespect George Mason.
Well, I mean, Alabama was ranked number 2 at the time. So
and High Point, he had 29 against High Point. I'm just looking at the stats right now.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess I forgot about that. Against
no ball. What can I say? And 33 against High Point. Oh, Kasey, don't disrespect the day.
I'm just thinking, but he's moving to the Big Ten. I'm just comparing him against Power 4, guys. Yeah. Another thing about Marsh that really stands out to me: great defender, two steals per game last year. He's a guy that I kind of have my NBA comp to Davion Mitchell a bit, maybe prime Davion Mitchell. He's not the tallest guy. He's 5'10". He's 165 pounds. But his improvement last year, he went from 6 points per game to almost 19 points per game. really good dribbler. I think he's going to fit the Muss system well. We didn't really see kind of a shifty small guard last year play. I mean, USC had Yates and Claude, two guys that were, they played bigger than they were, I felt like, to a certain extent. So what is your take on Marsh? I have him at the starting shooting guard in my depth chart. 18.8 points per game last year. You don't really have a ton of guard depth. Like I said, I see him at that starting spot.
I do not have him starting. I have him coming off the bench. I think he'd be the backup point guard. Marsh had a very good season at UNC Asheville. However, the thing I will contest about your point, move him around, he is not moving around anywhere. I don't see him playing anywhere except for that point guard position. I see this guy as a true through and through point guard. Obviously, the numbers are a little different, more of a traditional shooting guard, a guy who would just get you a bucket, not much else. I don't see a lot of wiggle room, however, when you're playing a lot of these top Big Ten teams with the position-wise. As you mentioned, great defender, averaged over 2 steals per game, I see him being that backup point guard position. And though USC doesn't have really another true point guard on the team, I think he'll be the backup one. And I have Rodney Rice and Chad Baker-Mazara. CBM's not going to run the point guard, but I could see Rodney Rice running that point guard position, put CBM at the 2.
So if you have CBM at the 2, who's your starting 3?
Here, I'll tell you the starting five because I don't think it's different from yours, but it's not that different. That is, I have Rodney Rice at the 1, CBM at the 2, Terrence Williams 3, Ezra Asar 4, and Jacob Kofi at the 5.
Yeah, so I have a similar one. Mine's a little different because I have Terrence Williams coming off the bench as like a 6-man. I think him and Amarian Dickerson are, very good assets to have off the bench. And I don't hate Terrence Williams in the starting lineup. Like he started a few games last year. He looked really good. Unfortunately, got injured, I think, game 7, game 8 of the season.
Not very long.
Yeah, didn't play very long and didn't really play against much real competition. I think he did play against Oregon and had a good game, though. But, yeah, I think the point is, though, I think we're sort of saying the same thing. I think they want size in the starting lineup, and they're going to have a lot of it. I think that's one reason why the Arenas injury, while it is very devastating, it's not something they can't necessarily come back from.
Yes.
Just because they have the size and they have – I agree a little bit with your wiggle room point, but I think they do have some wiggle room with some of these positions. I think, guys like Jerry Easter could really slot in as a combo guard. You could get some good minutes out of him. And I think the forwards, you have a pretty good amount of depth at the forwards. I think, Usar could give you some good minutes. And I think the 3 and the 4 are going to be fine. I do have Chad Baker-Mazara at the 3. My starting lineup: Rice, Marsh, Mazara, Asar, Kofi, 1 through 5. So again, I think we're probably going to see a little bit of both of what we're saying. I think we could definitely see a bigger lineup for Muss without Marsh in the starting lineup, but maybe some nights they're playing against a team that doesn't have a 7-footer, and they want to go with him in the starting lineup. So I see what you're saying. I definitely see your point there. I just think defensively, this team is going to be a lot better than last year. I mean, you have a guy like, I think you have a guy like Marsh in the starting lineup. You have a guy like Dickerson off the bench. There's so much.
Dines, throw him as well.
Yeah, Gabe Dines. I mean, I don't have Dines picking up a ton of minutes this year, but I think he's a guy that you could have come in and the fourth or the second half rather, and have a really big, 3 minutes of just solid defense. So I definitely agree. But let's move on to another guy, a bigger guard, EJ Neal, out of Sacramento State, not too far from where I live. Backup point guard behind Rice, ? Is my sort of question. I want to yield to you. I know we have a little bit of a different lineup, but what's your initial sort of take on that?
I don't think this guy's going to be running point, I'll be honest. I don't think he was much of a point guard at Sac State, was he? I see this guy getting a lot less minutes than I think you do. He was a fine player on a bad Sacramento State team. So I don't really see him getting a ton of minutes as far as, especially that backup point guard. That's why I think Jordan Marsh is really going to fit into that backup point guard slot. I think he's a lot more versatile, a lot more proven at a lower level, Big West to the what's UNC Asheville in the I'm forgetting it now. But I don't see him getting that many minutes. I'll be honest. I could see him develop. Maybe he's a great defender. I haven't watched his tape, so I apologize on that.
No, you're good. I watched a bit of it. I can dive in on it. I mean,
Okay, go for it.
the reason why I have him as the backup point guard is a couple of reasons. One, obviously they don't have the depth there, and I could see a guy like Rodney Rice playing most of the minutes anyways. So I feel like, if he's a backup, he might not even be playing more than, 10 minutes in a game per chance. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen every night, but in a high leverage game, maybe against UCLA, maybe against a big, Big Ten opponent, right, you're expecting a lot of minutes out of Rice as you are on any given night. So I think saying that EJ Neal's the point guard or backup point guard is not crazy to me. But yeah, I did watch his tape. And the reason why I sort of have him as a point guard is because he's a very good facilitator, but he's also a good catch and shoot guy. So he, at Sacramento State a lot, would flood down middle with a lot of his passes, then space out on the wing. And he loves that wing three. I mean, he shot a lot of threes last year. Again, I'll make the comparison again, kind of like Chibuzo Abo, a guy that just kind of sits on the wing, and if you pass him the ball, he's going to shoot the three. He's a good facilitator, and I agree. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. He's not a traditional point guard, but USC does need a backup point guard, and maybe it's Marsh, maybe it's Neal. Somebody has to do it, right? So
yeah, yes. However, this is one where once again we come to the disagreement because I think they're just going to go with a big lineup next year. Oh, excuse me. A big lineup next year, just like they kind of did last year without a traditional really point guard, if you think about it. I mean, Desmond Claude and Wesley Yates were running the point. Chad Baker-Mazara ran the two at Auburn. He was playing. He's 6'9". He was running that shooting guard position. I think that's more his natural position rather than a small forward. So I think he's going to be there. And that way you do actually have a little depth where you can bring in an inexperienced point guard like Jordan Marsh off the bench.
It's not a horrible idea. Again, and I think the depth part of this is the huge question mark because, you want to get big minutes out of whoever's playing the guard. And I think last year we saw that, like, when a guy like Desmond Claude wasn't on the floor and, or maybe injured, and you have to have a guy like Clark Slacker taking over most of the minutes, you're just not necessarily going to get that high leverage play. And I think this year the positional depth might be equally as thin as last year, but I think you might have some actually better players. Rodney Rice is a great player, fantastic player. So, yeah.
No, I do agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I want to just spend a moment on this guy because he's not a USC Trojan anymore. Actually never played for USC, but he was supposed to. Keza Gifa, the French guard, he transferred to Ole Miss beginning of June. So we didn't have a chance to talk about that, but yeah, I mean, he probably wasn't going to play much at USC anyways. I had him as the fourth shooting guard on the team, but I watched his tape. Very similar to Desmond Claude, both really big drivers from the top of the key, can absorb contact well. Pretty good player. Big improvement from last year. I just didn't see him playing much, and I think that's probably why he transferred.
Yeah, when we so real, I forgot he was on the roster. Completely forgot.
Fair enough. I mean, he'll never be remembered as a USC Trojan. He was there for about a month. I don't even know if he touched down in LA, but yeah, I mean, best wishes over at Ole Miss. But yeah, I mean, I think, this team definitely from last year, what we saw was just a lot of guys playing sort of out of position. And a lot of that came with the injuries. I mean, you lose a guy, like Terrence Williams early in the year. It allows a guy like Wesley Yates to come in the lineup. So I think it was sort of, I mean, it sucks Terrence Williams got hurt, but if he doesn't get hurt, you don't know if Wesley Yates really gets any time that year. And so it's sort of a big what if kind of thing. One other guy I want to talk about before we, I guess open it up a little bit more into big picture stuff is Ryan Cornish, 6'3", 170-pound guard. He's a combo guard, could flex to the point guard, could flex to the shooting guard. He started 23 of 27 games for Dartmouth last year, averaged over 17, 5 rebounds, all Ivy League first-team honors. I mean, he's one of the best Dartmouth players of all time, I think, when it's all said and done. I don't know if that's saying much. But he improved by 10 points from his junior to senior years. I think he'll take the Clark Slacker role from last year, be a vet, be a leader, come on the court, expect, some big minutes, when they need him to, especially when the guard depth runs thin. And he's a good driver. He can absorb the contact. 49% of his field goals last year, or field goal attempts last year, were at the rim. And he can shoot the three, nearly 50% career three-point shooter at Dartmouth.
Yeah, see, I'll be honest, I see this guy getting a lot more minutes at the point guard position than EJ Neal. I mean, as you mentioned, the Clark Slaggert role can shoot, can drive. Combo guard is really what he's listed as, what Musselman prefers him as. I see him getting a lot more minutes at the 1 and 2 than EJ Neal.
I don't hate that take. I mean, here's the thing, though, with Slaggert that I felt like they put him at the 1, but he wasn't really the best facilitator when it was all said and done. I felt like although Claude was sort of playing out of position most of the time, at least Claude was a pretty good facilitator. He could pass well. He could find guys in transition. I don't know if Slaggert was necessarily doing all of that. I feel like he was a guy who was really good for spacing because he could he could be quick and sit on the wing and shoot, but he could also pull up and shoot as well. I'm not saying he's a guy who's just sitting in the corner. But
yeah, so I disagree just a little bit because Clark Slaggert was 6 foot, 6'1". What was he? He was short. Ryan Cornish is 6'4". That's a guy who can actually drive and give you space, both creating it inside and outside. So that's why I think he'd be a lot better addition to the team than Slaggert was last year. No disrespect to Clark Slaggert.
Yeah, I mean, both are Ivy League guys. So
yeah.
It's interesting. I guess the reason why maybe I was a little more hesitant is it'll be interesting to see how a guy playing at Dartmouth will translate to USC in the Big Ten. I mean, it's definitely a step up. And I think with EJ Neal, I mean, same conversation. It's not like playing at Sac State is necessarily, the toughest competition either. I think that was tested well with St. Thomas last year. I think St. Thomas, he played at Northern Colorado, was very, very good there. And, was a guy who's touted as a potential draft pick and really didn't do all that much this year.
Didn't translate that much, yeah. Do we know if he ever made the Clippers? Do we know how many of those guys made the final rosters, by the way?
I actually was curious about that. I should have searched it up. I know Chibuzo Abo did pretty good in the summer league, I thought. But while you look at that, I think overall, like we've talked about some of these guys, I mean, the sizing and the defense, I think, are going to be so improved from last year, just overall in these lineups. I mean, we know that Musselman loves, a hard-witted, gritty defensive type of team. And I think when you throw guys in there, even we talk about the starting lineup. I think the number 2 lineup, the bench, the reserves could be really good. I mean, you could throw some big minutes at Jerry Easter, see what he does. Mm-hmm. And then, a guy like Terrence Williams is great for spacing. Dickerson in the middle. I mean, that guy can block shots like nobody else. I think really the depth of this team is very, very good, even without Arenas. From last year, seeing, guys like Josh Cohen having to come in for big minutes, and no disrespect to him, but it just felt like, they were running out of gas in these games.
Yeah.
Like the UCLA.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the team's going to be a lot better. I think the defense is going to be a lot better, as we kind of mentioned. I've also been following John Rothstein a little bit, just like because he's been at practices these past couple days at USC. He's had some really good things to say about the Trojans just practice. You want me to read 2 of these tweets that he had real quick?
Do it, man.
So first off, he did say that 2 guys standing out on defense, Jordan Marsh and Gabe Dines, and both, his words from Twitter, both are going to be factors in Trojans rotation. Incredible on-ball defense from Marsh. So speaks to your point of how he'll probably get a lot of minutes. Another one, Virginia transfer Jacob Kofi is shining here at USC. Tremendous instincts and reads defensively, and under-the-radar transfer in the Big Ten. Agree with that one a lot. Virginia teaches, if they do one thing, they teach great defensive basketball. That is what you got to know about them. Obviously, Tony Bennett did retire right before the season, before he could really get minutes with them, with Tony under Bennett. Still, they teach great defensive basketball. That's what they're known for. And then Rothstein's early prediction of the USC 2025-2026 starting 5, it's the same one as yours. Jordan Marsh, Rodney Rice, Chad Baker-Mazara, Ezra Asar, and Jacob Kofi. So
I swear I didn't copy him. I came up with that on my own, and wow, I guess a man who's very, very prominent in the college basketball community agrees with me. But Terrence, I like yours too. Don't get me wrong. I like your starting lineup too.
I do want to correct you really quickly about something, because you said Chibuzo Abo was having a pretty good summer league. Chibuzo Abo's summer league goes as followed: 3 points, 3 rebounds, 5 points, 1 rebound, 6.0 rebounds, and then 2-0-0 games.
He's a glue guy, man.
Okay.
He's a glue guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I got it mixed up with someone else. I thought it was. I'll be honest. I haven't been watching every single summer league game.
What have you been doing with your time?
Yeah, exactly. I want to ask you because we talked about the rest of the guys in April. So if you guys want to talk, like, hear all our analysis on guys like Kofi, Rice, go to that April 20 something episode way back a few months ago because we gave more in-depth stuff about those guys. But I want to ask you, whole roster, who's your biggest X factor for this year? And I'll ask you another question after
Good
that.
question. X factor. I will say Ezra Sarr. Very excited about that guy. Traditional 3-4 player who can't really shoot the ball that well, but I think he's going to be really good. Last year at Utah, averaged 12 and 8, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little less on the rebounds. 5, okay, definitely less. But everything I read about him, watched a little film, good rebounder, great defender. I think he's going to be great. And I think if he can potentially elevate that 3-point game, he might be unstoppable.
I agree with you because I think about it this way. USC was forcing a guy like Rashawn Agee, who we know is very talented, to play center last year because USC had no center depth at all. And so I see a guy like Asar being, kind of what Rashawn Agee was supposed to be, a guy who can, sometimes shoot it, drive well, as like you said, a 3 or a 4, can stretch the floor a bit. I think he's going to be a huge, not just an X factor, but a huge breakout candidate for USC. He played, against Big 12 competition last year. He had some really good games. I mean, he had, some not the greatest of competition in terms of some of his good games, but he had, 26 against BYU. He did not do great against Houston. He only had 1 point against a team that eventually went to the Natty, but he had 18 against Arizona. Like, there were a lot of good games for him where you were like, wow, this is sort of a pleasant surprise to see. Who is this guy? And he's 6'8", so he has the size as well. But I guess I sort of hinted at it, and this sort of ties in with X Factor. Who's your biggest, I guess, breakout candidate? It doesn't necessarily have to be a young guy, but someone who maybe like an EJ Neal, only averaged 8 points last year. Do you see a big jump from anyone who's going to, get better this year?
Yeah, dude, I think it's Jacob Kofi. I alluded to it, average around 8 last year with Virginia. Very solid, nothing special. I think he's going to take a leap. He 13, 14, and 7, 8. Just a very solid center. I'm excited about him. This is a guy who was good on a Virginia team, which was they were in a transition period. Obviously, Tony Bennett retiring just a couple days before the season started. I think he's going to take a leap under Musselman, going from a not real team to, I'm not going to say not real, but a not good team, to a guy, Eric Musselman, who has that NCAA pedigree like Tony Bennett did. Not quite the same, of course, but a good player. If he can elevate his 3-point game, I've said that about Sarr, shot about 24% last year, then he'll be elite. Don't really think he'll do that, but I think he could take that leap, be a 14 and 8 guy.
I love Kofi's game. I mean, immediately when they signed him, I thought, wow, this is going to be a really fun player to watch because I feel like he has so much untapped upside. His ceiling is very high. And we talked about sort of the centers last year. You didn't really have a guy like Kofi who is a center but can play sort of very versatile, I'll say, in terms of his game. He can do a lot of things that most centers can't do. And so I'm super excited to see his game. And I think, you have the depth at center where you don't need to have him play, a ton of defensive minutes every second. He's a young guy still. You could, throw in a guy like Gabe Dines, like you said. You could throw in someone like that to kind of carry the load. But yeah, again, it's one of those things where, USC is still adjusting to the Big Ten. I want to read some of these road matchups because they have some big trips to make, and we know the road was tough for them last year, even though they actually did play pretty good on the road. Wins against, a team like Illinois will tell you that. They have Michigan on the road, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. I'll read the home in a moment, but are there any matchups there that immediately stick out to you?
I mean, all of them. Michigan, that whole trip north, Michigan State, it's all north, of course, but Michigan State, those are always going to be really tough ones. They get Purdue at home, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I don't know if it's been announced yet, but I think they played Purdue away last year. So yeah.
Yeah, those are tough. I'm not gonna lie. Probably those two though. Michigan State. I think Dusty May is a great coach. Obviously, Michigan State. How am I blanking on head coach? Why
Is it?
am I? Izzo, Tom Izzo. Thank you. I don't know why I was blanking on his name. Two phenomenal coaches, two great programs. Elite Eight, Sweet 16. If Michigan had beat Auburn, which I put in my bracket, then they would have both met in the Elite Eight. Would have been electric.
That would have been electric. I mean, obviously USC beat Michigan State last year, lost to Michigan. Probably could have beaten Michigan if Desmond Claude doesn't foul out.
They could have beat a lot of teams. It was right after that Michigan State game, which we were both at, that the season cratered.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like this team had I mean, we talk about USC football on our other podcast, being a few plays away from, being a 9-3 team. This basketball team, though, like the UCLA USC game where, USC misses, I don't even remember how many free throws in the final minutes. And then, like you mentioned, the Michigan game, like there's so many games, even the Northwestern game, that game without Claude too, like that really showed it was a litmus test for Clark Slacker, and he rose to the occasion. So I think that knowing that, and then knowing that they're bringing in a lot of guys who know what it's like to play at the Power 6 or Power 5 now, it's huge. I mean, a guy like, Desmond Claude, although he played at Xavier, he still was adjusting. You could tell his game was still translating to the Big Ten, trying to find it out. It's a young team last year in terms, not necessarily in terms of age, but in terms of experience. This year, you have a lot more seasoned guys like, Mazzara, whatnot, go down the list. We've talked about them already. I want to ask you as well. I think I probably asked you this the last time we talked on this show. What's the floor and the ceiling for this team? Not necessarily wins and losses, but, the tournament, stuff like that.
Floor is they missed the tournament and are like just under 500, I think, because it could be the same scenario as last year. Even though we have talked about it, I think this team is more talented than last year. It's still an entirely new team of transfers. Floor is they miss the tournament and go like just under or just above 500. That's what I think. Ceiling, 6 seed. 6 seed, and they can make like a Sweet 6, a team that's dangerous and like will give like a 3 seed a scare or make that Sweet 16. That's what I think. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I know ESPN mocked them, and this was before all the Arenas stuff happened, as I believe a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
which
very high.
I was like, wow,
a little high. Yeah,
I don't know what sort of analytics they were using, or if it was what algorithm predicted that. But I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's huge. And I don't know if they'll necessarily be as touted as highly without, Alijah Arenas, of course, but still, I think they're a team that can get in. They were a bubble team for most of the year last year. They made some noise in the Big Ten tournament. They almost beat Purdue. They should have beat Purdue.
Probably should have, yeah.
The officiating in that game was very, let's just say it had USC players, wanting to scrap at the end of that game. They beat Rutgers though, with who had 2 early picks in the draft. So I guess that's the consolation prize.
Oh yeah, really excited about a Rutgers win. Yeah.
Well, I want to round this out a bit. I mean, we talked about our depth charts already. I went ahead and ranked guys in terms of minutes. I didn't ask you to do that. So if you don't have
I do not have that.
You could analyze mine. Because one thing I forgot to say about EJ Neal. I have him as my backup point guard, but I have him playing the 10th most minutes, or being 10th on the depth chart. So I'll read one. So they have 12 players, 13 if you include Arenas, but of course he won't be included. Starting PG, Rodney Rice. Shooting guard, Jordan Marsh. Chad Baker Mazzara at the 3. Ezra Usar at the 4. Jacob Kofi at the 5. Now the 6th man, Amarian Dickerson. The 7th, Terrence Williams the 2nd. Jerry Easter at the 8. The 9, Gabe Dines. 10, EJ Neal Jr., 11, Ryan Cornish, 12, Jaden Brownell.
I think I'd mostly agree with that. I'd maybe, we talked about maybe move Cornish up and maybe replace. I think I'd swap Cornish and Easter.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I think we saw last year, the true freshmen, Elohim and Shelley, weren't necessarily funneled in that much. And I think it's fair to sort of see where the development of Easter goes. he's a very highly touted prospect, but he's no Alijah Arenas. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of everything I plan for today. Do you have any sort of closing thoughts going out? I mean, it's obviously still 100 days till the season. A lot can change.
Not really. No, I think they're going to be a lot better than last year, which is good. I think definitely will be a tournament team. That's what I think. I think they'll make the tournament.
Last thing I want to say, I just find it crazy that we not to harp on the past too much, but like my freshman year at USC 2 years ago, they were projected probably even higher than they were now, maybe around the same. I mean, you have Isaiah Collier supposed to be,
they were preseason top 25. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people had him as, dare I say, the number one pick, projected early.
See what?
And then you have Boogie Ellis, who people were saying is the best guard in the Pac-12. And I think he was still top, 3, top 4. Yeah. There was some movement. And then, that's on top of other 5 stars and 4 stars, Bronny James, right there. But the fact that they missed the tournament just still makes me a little bit like,
I think, of course, Musselman to Enfield or vice versa. So,
yeah, I mean, both have had their share of success in the tournament. Obviously, I don't think Enfield's coaching necessarily translated to USC. I think he's a great coach, all in through, but I think his legacy tainted a bit now just with how things ended and going to SMU, even though, he still has a good career, but that's just going to about do things. Really appreciate you, Terence, for coming on. I mean, this is practically a co-podcast at this point. I say I host it, but that's only because I started this thing. But I really appreciate you again. Make sure to like and subscribe if you like this. Share it everywhere. And we'll be back closer to the season. This guy will be back on at some point. And appreciate it again. Happy birthday.
Appreciate it, man.
All right. Have a good one.